What happens when a single moment of cruelty unravels a life built on entitlement? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and pastel mailboxes hid simmering tensions, a homeowners association meeting became the stage for a reckoning no one saw coming. The air was thick with the scent of Karen flowers, those vibrant, stubborn blooms that lined every garden in the neighborhood, a symbol of beauty masking resilience. But beneath their delicate petals, a storm was brewing, one that would expose raw truths and shatter fragile egos. Amelia Harper sat at the back of the community center, her hands folded tightly in her lap. At 32, she carried the weight of loss like a shadow. Her husband, Captain Daniel Harper, had died 2 years prior in a desert ambush, leaving her with a folded flag, a modest pension, and a heart that refused to heal. She'd moved to Willow Creek to escape the pitying stares of her old town, hoping for a fresh start. But the HOA, led by the indomitable Karen Whitmore, had other plans. Karen, 48, was the undisputed queen of Willow Creek. Her blonde bob was as sharp as her tongue, and her authority over the neighborhood was absolute. She ruled the HOA with an iron grip, her voice slicing through debates about mailbox colors or hedge heights. To Karen, Amelia was an outsider, a young widow who dared to let her lawn grow a half-inch too long, whose modest sedan clashed with the neighborhood's gleaming SUVs. Karen saw Amelia's existence as a blemish on her perfect domain. The meeting began with its usual monotony: complaints about untrimmed shrubs, a proposal for new streetlights. Amelia stayed silent, her eyes tracing the grain of the wooden table. Then Karen's voice cut through the hum. Next item, the Harper property. Frankly, it's an eyesore. We can't have weeds and neglect dragging down our property values. She paused, her gaze locking onto Amelia. Some people think they can leech off this community without contributing. The word leech landed like a slap. Whispers rippled through the room. Amelia's cheeks burned, but she held her composure, her fingers tightening around the edge of her chair. She wanted to scream that she wasn't a leech, that she was rebuilding her life from ashes, but shame glued her lips shut. Karen smirked, sensing victory, and moved on to the next agenda item. Unbeknownst to Karen, a pair of eyes watched from the side of the room. Lucas Bennett, a lanky 19-year-old college student and Amelia's cousin, had slipped into the meeting unnoticed. Lucas wasn't a regular at these gatherings. He'd only come to drop off a casserole for Amelia and decided to stay when he heard Karen's venomous tone. Lucas was no stranger to Karen's antics, grown up hearing stories of her reign over Willow Creek, but what Karen didn't know was that Lucas's uncle, Senator Thomas Bennett, held sway far beyond the neighborhood's picket fences. Lucas texted his uncle mid-meeting, his thumbs flying over the screen. Karen Whitmore just called Amelia a leech in front of everyone. Can you do something? Senator Bennett, a man known for his quiet intensity and fierce loyalty to family, was not one to let such an insult slide. He replied simply, "I'm on it." The next day, Willow Creek buzzed with unease. Karen, oblivious to the storm she'd stirred, went about her routine inspecting neighbors' lawns, barking orders at the landscapers. But by evening, a letter arrived from the state capitol, addressed to the HOA board. It was polite but pointed, signed by Senator Thomas Bennett himself. He expressed deep concern over reports of hostile and discriminatory behavior within the HOA, specifically citing the public humiliation of a war widow. The letter hinted at a potential investigation into the HOA's practices, with a not-so-subtle mention of state funding tied to community compliance. Karen's face paled as she read the letter at the emergency board meeting. "Who sent this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. Amelia, who'd been invited to the meeting at Lucas's urging, sat quietly, her expression unreadable. Karen's eyes narrowed. "This is about you, isn't it?" she spat at Amelia. "You're playing the victim card to get out of following rules." That's when Lucas stepped forward, his voice steady but sharp. "Actually, Karen, this is about you bullying someone who's already lost everything. My uncle doesn't take kindly to that." The room froze. Karen's jaw dropped. "Your uncle?" she stammered. Lucas nodded. "Senator Thomas Bennett. Maybe you've heard of him. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Karen's authority, built on years of intimidation, crumbled in an instant. The board members, sensing the shift, began murmuring about accountability and transparency. Karen's reign was unraveling, but the real twist was yet to come. Enter Margaret Voss, a soft-spoken retiree who'd lived in Willow Creek for decades. Margaret rarely spoke at meetings, her presence as unassuming as the faded Karen flowers in her garden. But that night, she stood, her frail frame trembling with resolve. "I've kept quiet too long," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Karen, you've bullied this neighborhood for years, included. When my husband was dying, you fined us for a cracked driveway. You called us a drain on the community. I never spoke up because I was afraid. But Amelia's courage and Lucas Shaw's reminded me what's right." Margaret's words were a bombshell. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Neighbors who'd cowered under Karen's rule began sharing their own stories. Fines for minor infractions, snide comments, public shaming. Karen's face twisted in panic as the community turned against her. Margaret, the unlikeliest of rebels, had ignited a revolt. Over the next week, the HOA board voted to remove Karen as president. Senator Bennett's office followed through, launching a review of the HOA's finances, uncovering years of questionable fees and favoritism. Karen's pristine reputation shattered, and her social standing in Willow Creek evaporated. Neighbors who once fawned over her now crossed the street to avoid her. The Karen flowers in her garden, once her pride, seemed to wilt under the weight of her disgrace. But the story doesn't end with Karen's fall. Amelia, though vindicated, felt no joy. The public shaming at the meeting had reopened wounds she'd tried to bury. She sat on her porch one evening, staring at the Karen flowers Daniel had loved, their petals catching the fading light. Lucas joined her, his youthful optimism tempered by the ordeal. "You okay?" he asked. Amelia sighed. "I thought winning would feel better, but it just hurts." She paused, her voice breaking. Daniel would have hated this people tearing each other apart. He fought for something better. Lucas nodded, his eyes glistening. He'd idolized Daniel, his cousin's husband, a man who'd taught him to fish and laugh through life storms. Now Daniel's absence felt heavier than ever. In a final, bitter twist, Amelia decided to leave Willow Creek. The victory over Karen had come at a cost: her privacy, her peace, her fragile hope for a new beginning. She packed her belongings, leaving behind the Karen flowers and the neighborhood that had judged her so harshly. As she drove away, the senator's letter framed in her passenger seat, she felt a pang of regret. Not for Karen's downfall, but for the community that could have been a place where kindness bloomed as fiercely as those stubborn flowers. Lucas watched her car disappear, his heart heavy. Margaret, standing beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "She'll find her way," she said softly. "Sometimes, it takes losing everything to see what matters." Lucas nodded, but the words offered little comfort. The Karen flowers swayed in the breeze, their beauty a cruel reminder of a neighborhood that had failed its own. Nd.